Tell me, you and I were weekend through the transcendental night full of diamonds.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Old Men in Chairs. Today we celebrate the life and music of Phil Lesh, the Grateful Dead bassist who passed away last week. I've been trying to get this video done for a number of days, but I continue to have learning curve problems with my new equipment. But I think I've got it figured out. We'll see. I go way back with the Grateful Dead. It happened that my very first girlfriend was from San Francisco. And even though I lived on the East Coast growing up, she came east one summer of 1967, bringing with her some marijuana and the latest psychedelic albums from her native city. Included was the first Grateful Dead album that came out in March of 1967. So I started listening to their music fairly early on. Now, in 1968, they released a single of the song Dark Star, which I will play a little later. It's only about 3 minutes long, but in concert, that song became legendary as a song that the group would jam to for 20 to 30 or more minutes. And I just happened to be there many times to listen to that because I spent the summer of 1969 in San Francisco. The Dead at that time were not really the big arena show that they later became, and they were playing, especially during the week, at a little venue out on the beach in San Francisco near the ocean called Family Dog on the Great Highway. And it was a very small venue. I think it was a former roller skate arena. And typically, if we went out to see the Dead on a weekday night, probably only be a couple hundred people in the audience. You could walk right up to the stage. A lot of people were dancing to the music, but the stage was just a little tiny, maybe 2-foot riser above the floor. And so I heard the jam to Dark Star many, many times. Pictured on the screen is kind of the classic lineup of the Dead, starting with Phil on the extreme right side playing the bass guitar, Bill Kreutzmann, the drummer, and then that's Bob Weir with rhythm guitar, and on the far left of the stage, of course, is Jerry Garcia, the lead guitarist. Now, Jerry and Phil would kind of take the lead in the improvisation of this song, and let me play a little bit of that rather than try to describe it. It's almost like dueling lead guitars with Jerry on the regular guitar and Phil on the bass playing very intricate pattern there, high up on the fret a lot of times, going back and forth. Phil's background was that he had never actually played bass guitar before he joined the group, but he had more of a classical and jazz background, and he was the one that led the group into more of this improvisational style for which they became rightfully very famous. Phil was very much influenced by some of the great of modern jazz, including John Coltrane. Now I realize it's hard to do a reaction video to a jazz improvisation because to really appreciate it, they have to go on for many, many minutes. I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then I will go back and play the single of the song. jumping on lead guitar. So now you've really got three lead instruments all jamming off each other. And of course, this particular rendition, which took place in 1972 in Oregon, goes on for 36 minutes. So you can look it up and listen to the whole thing yourself. There's many, many versions of Dark Star online, but I wanted this one to show you the actual players in the classic lineup. There's also Godcock, I don't know how you say his name, is on piano, and you can hear him making some chords along to the music as well. Let's move over to the actual single, and then you can hear words to the song. Try to talk about what the song might mean, if anybody knows. Here is a remastered version of the 1968 single. Let me play a little bit of this, and then we can talk about the lyrics and what they may mean.
Shall we go, you and I, where we can, through the transitive nightfall of diamonds.
First thing that you notice about the single is it's much more up-tempo. They wanted to squeeze as much as they could, I guess, into the 3-minute radio play song. So it goes a lot faster than more refined meditation. Okay, I'll just read through the lyrics quickly. Dark star crashes, pouring its light into ashes. Reason tatters. The forces tear loose from the axis. Searchlight casting for faults in the clouds of delusion. Shall we go, you and I, while we can, through the transitive nightfall of diamonds? These lyrics were written by Robert Hunter, who became the Grateful Dead lyricist, but it was actually the first song he ever wrote the lyrics for. They had already composed the music, and he was sitting in another room listening to the music and came up with those lyrics, that first verse. He said that final line, through the transitive nightfall of diamonds. He doesn't actually know what transitive nightfall of diamonds means, but he said it sounded pretty good. And I don't know what it means either, but it creates an image, a nightfall of diamonds, probably stars in the sky, talking about a dark star. That's an image of diamonds shimmering in the sky. But the first part of that, shall we go, you and I, while we can. He said he had been reading a famous poem by T.S. Eliot, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. The opening lines of that poem are, shall we go, you and I, while the evening is spread out against the sky. So he cribbed a little bit of that poem to get the chorus of this great song. very end there, two things. One, you can hear somebody talking. Supposedly that is Robert Hunter. I don't know what he's saying. It's very faint. And at the very end, you hear a little banjo. Of course, Jerry was a banjo player first before he ever picked up a guitar, and he continued to play banjo in some of his side groups. Now, when we used to go family dog at the beach, frequently they would start out with a bluegrass group that later evolved into the New Riders of the Purple Sage. But at that time, Jerry would be playing either the banjo or even the pedal steel guitar. Phil Lesh might be playing the bass. The drummer, Bill, would be playing along. But then they'd have a few other players who actually became a separate group over time. And they would play a set like that. Then the Deadwood came on and play an electric set after that. We saw that a number of times that summer. Really kind of there at the beginning, and it's been a long, strange ride. It ended for Phil last week after almost 60 years of performance. After Jerry died in 1993, he kept going with a number of iterations of the Dead, Phil Lesh and Friends, Further. I didn't follow all those. In fact, I never saw the Grateful Dead again after the summer of '69. I know that seems crazy because they became so popular and were selling out arenas all around the world. But I'd seen what I needed to see in 1969. It was a great scene. We will always remember Phil Lesh as one of the most innovative bass players. You can kind of see in his style what later evolved with Jaco Pastorius. Very similar approach to the bass guitar. Thank you, Phil, for all your contribution.